The Age of Disclosure has become one of the most watched and discussed political documentaries in recent memory, rippling far beyond movie theaters into Congress, the Pentagon, and a fast-growing national conversation about what the U.S. government knows about unexplained objects in our airspace. Its director spent years interviewing intelligence officials, military pilots, and former Pentagon leaders, many now speaking more openly than ever before about what they've seen, what they've documented, and what remains unknown. And the man who lit the match for this conversation is director and producer of The Age of Disclosure, Dan Farah. Dan, I am so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, 34 high-level government, military, and intelligence officials on the record talking about UAPs or UFOs in your documentary. What was a moment during your reporting when this stopped being a film and became a responsibility?
Well, a big moment for me was I interviewed Senator Rubio, who's now our Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, on the same day that I interviewed Senator Gillibrand from New York. And these are two people who are ideologically, politically opposed to each other, but they both looked me in the eye and told me how important this issue is and how important this film is for getting the truth out there. And that was a pretty eye-opening day for me, seeing how bipartisan the issue is at a time where, the parties in our country don't really agree on anything. And just seeing how serious people at that level take this.
Something that comes through in this film is that it isn't about curiosity anymore. It's about responsibility, national security, aviation safety, even technological competition. Why do you think so many people, or what have you found from making this film, why so many people inside the system decided that now was the moment to finally go public?
Look, one of the big reveals in my film that a number of the intelligence, military, and government officials reveal is that elements of the U.S. government are in a very high stakes secret Cold War race with adversarial nations like China and Russia to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. And as incredible as that sounds, these are very credible people sharing this information. And it speaks to why they think it's so important to get the truth out there. Their perspective is it's very challenging to win a technology race that has this, stakes like this, when 99% of the scientists in the country don't even know this is a valid area of inquiry. This is a real situation, and it doesn't largely have public support because they don't know it's real. Right. And so their hope in going public in this film was to open the public's eyes and to get that support that's needed to pursue this the correct way and to make it a real conversation inside of academia and the scientific community so we can win this race we're in.
Something I found interesting about this film, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there's classified information that government officials, they can't talk about. And then there's information that they can talk about, and that's what they're saying on the record here. You're not getting whistleblowers who are saying something that's going to get them killed or get them locked up or breaching some sort of contract. They're explaining what is unclassified, what they could be talking about, but they have chosen not to in the past because they felt it wasn't safe for them. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
So that's what's crazy to me is that we should have had this information before. It wasn't classified, and they chose not to talk about it, and you got them to talk. Speak about that for a moment.
Yeah, so every one of the 34 officials I interviewed, they break their silence with what they can lawfully disclose. And as you said, that's information that legally they can talk about. Historically, they have been discouraged from doing so. Through a number of, as a result of a number of different sort of, let's just call it, threats, like threats to their career, threats to their reputation, in some cases, threats to their lives. There's been a lot of reasons people haven't spoken up in the past. There's a cultural stigma in our country, a giggle factor when people talk about UFOs or life from elsewhere. And that giggle factor can really damage someone's, reputation and their career. And so that alone is a valid reason why people just chose to stay in the shadows, right? Certainly none of the officials I interviewed wanted to be the one guy out on a limb saying something extraordinary and then being the one person subject to all the pushback, right? So what I presented was an opportunity for all of these people to come together arm in arm and find sort of strength in numbers and come forward together. And that gave them the comfort they needed to break their silence on what they lawfully could. And what's a wild thought, I must say, is if all of this extraordinary information revealed in my film is what they can lawfully disclose, it begs the question of what's on the other side of that
What's on
line.
the other side of that? Yeah. And why they, like, I understand why you broke down why they wouldn't say it before, but the fact that this could have been disclosed and should have been disclosed, it says a lot about you that they felt comfortable trusting you to share their story. I mean, this is not some, this is not some guy wearing it. There's no one in this documentary who's like some guy in a tin hat who says that they saw some lights in the sky in a cornfield. These are credible, intelligent, decorated people who are tied to our government, who are scientists, astrophysicists, engineers. These are people with a lot of credibility behind their name coming out talking about this. Thank you for making this film, first and foremost, because talk about, people who have this information and they're afraid to disclose it. A lot of filmmakers probably wouldn't, feel comfortable taking that on.
Thank
Was that a
you.
concern to you at all? Like, how is this going to, impact my reputation?
I mean, of course, I was a little concerned at the start as to whether this would create safety issues for me. But I also felt as my efforts picked up steam and I started to get so many people participating, there's just too many people involved, at the highest levels of our government. I mean, as you said, the people I interviewed, these are people who sit at the highest level of the military, government, intelligence communities. Rubio, for example, Gillibrand, Senator Rounds, senior Navy fighter pilots, commanders of entire strike groups, admirals, generals, General Jim Clapper, CIA officials, White House National Security Council members. It got to a point where I had so many significant people involved that I felt comfortable. Look, like a lot of your audience, I grew up curious about these big questions, like are we alone in the universe? Does the U.S. government know more about these things than the public does? I grew up on movies like Close Encounters and E.T. and
Love
TV
that
shows like
movie. Yeah, I love
X-Files.
those movies.
Yeah, these things keep, the pop culture a lot of us grew up with. I grew up in my childhood was the 80s and early 90s. The pop culture I grew up with made me curious about all this stuff. So I personally just always wished a movie like this existed. I always wished someone would make a documentary that only
Well, there
interviewed.
you go. You created what you wish was out, what you were wishing
Exactly,
was out
exactly.
there.
And that was my drive. I wanted to make the movie that I wanted to watch. And that was an exciting endeavor.
When I was a kid and you would hear about UFOs or aliens, you would see it on like Unsolved Mysteries, and there would be, this like, weird music around it, and it kind of was conspiratorial, and it kind of played into that stigma. And this movie, this documentary, it doesn't do that. And now that the film is out, something really interesting is happening. The conversation, it's not dying down. It only accelerated. You've said that this release has actually created new momentum inside the government. What are you
Yeah.
seeing behind the scenes since the film dropped?
Yeah. So first off, in the public eye, the film is the best-selling documentary in the history of Prime Video, which is a pretty great feeling.
That's a really good. You should be really proud of that. James
Yeah,
Cameron
people are
doesn't have
excited
that
to learn the
title.
truth.
You do.
Exactly. People are excited to learn the truth. And, inside of government, it's opened a lot of eyes. Right now, behind the scenes, senior members of Congress, a bipartisan coalition are putting together a new bill that they're going to fight for to try to bring about disclosure on this matter at another level. Additionally, some senior members of Congress are trying to organize a way to give amnesty to those involved in covering this up over the years so that they can comfortably step out of the shadows and share what they know without the fear of going to jail. Um, it's pretty amazing to see the impact the documentary is having because it opened the eyes of even senior leaders in government that you would think would have known what was going on, but had no clue.
Well, it definitely feels like the beginning of something, not the
Yeah.
end after watching this movie. And I want to read some of the reviews. These are quotes on the documentary from Academy Award winning filmmakers. The Age of Disclosure is a once in a generation cultural flashpoint. It confronts an enormous cover up in the US history with credibility, urgency, and staggering implications for all of us. That's from Oliver Stone, the Academy Award winning director of Platoon and Born on the 4th of July. Another one, for all of human history, man has wondered whether we are the only intelligent life in the universe. This is the film that finally answers that question with a firm, resounding, and bulletproof, all caps, no. A film that everyone needs to see. That's from Peter Farrelly, Academy Award-winning director of Green Book. Based on where things are headed right now, and judging by the reaction of the Age of Disclosure, that's just some of it. I mean, people online who are, people who aren't even talking. Megyn Kelly, I listened to her talk about you the other day. You weren't even on her show. I'm hearing people just talk about you in conversation in the media, in real life. What do you think the next phase of disclosure looks like? And what should the public be watching out for?
Look, I think we're going to see a few things happen. I think we're going to see Congress propose some very aggressive legislation that is intended to drive forward disclosure. I do think we're going to see some amnesty proposed to people that have remained in the shadows on this to encourage them to come forward. The reality of it is, once you acknowledge the situation is real, and that there are many people working on a covert program hidden from the public and hidden from Congress. You got to understand that those people are not going to come forward and step out of the shadows if they think they're going to be treated like criminals, or they think they're going to end up going to jail or having their reputations ruined. So you've got to create a path for those people to come forward, and that's what senior members of Congress are doing right now. They're trying to create a safe path for them to come forward. I think we'll see that happen this year. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see a sitting president step to the microphone and have the biggest moment in human history. Tell all of humanity that we're not alone in the universe and that the US intends to lead the way in this new chapter. I think that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
Wow. Do you think that will happen in your lifetime?
Hands down, yes, for sure.
Wow. Well, history will remember Dan Farah being on the forefront of that for sure with this film. Hopefully, that means there's a sequel coming out. There's a sequel in store with more information. Thank you so much, Dan Farah, for what you're doing for this topic, for the disclosure that you're helping get out there, that our government, for whatever reason it was, didn't provide for the American people and for the world. Thank you for doing that. There is a reason that this is breaking records. There's a reason this documentary is being shared and talked about by millions of people. It's because it's important, and it's something that we want to know more about, and you're helping make sure that happens. So thank you very much for that.
I appreciate it. It's the one thing that everyone on the planet is interested in, because we're all in this situation together. And the film reveals that the US government and other major nations have covered up the existence of non-human intelligent life for decades and kept that information from the public. And I think we're at a time where the public deserves to know fundamental truths like that. There's no logic to hiding reality and the nature of reality from the public.
The Age of Disclosure is available worldwide on Prime Video for purchase or rent.
Thanks, Justin.